And now this is going to be another video about legends, one being sung. That's the name of this game I'm talking about today. Well, in the most accessible way anyway, because Utawarerumono is kind of difficult to pronounce and is known for being, well, difficult to pronounce. Anyway, hello, I'm Milla, welcome to another Milla's Gaming video. This one is going to be, well, about the game I just mentioned, but specifically the first Utawarerumono, which is right at the back here. This is the standard game I'll be talking about. So Prelude to the Fallen, the visual novel, art strategy RPG classic, and why it's, well, essential basically if you're into strategy RPGs and visuals alike. Behind here is also the limited edition, which I have as well, which is also pretty nice, but getting ahead of ourselves, well, algorithm content goes here, like, subscribe, commenting, etc, blah blah blah. So, what is Utawarerumono? This is going to be a brief history lesson, because if you're into visual novels like me, you will probably know Aquaplus, and you'll know how far back they go to the late 90s with games like Shizuku and Kiswato, which were some of the major names that got on the map. And then you've got the Two Heart series and the White Album series, which I've talked about extensively before. Go watch those videos, please, I beg you. Finally, the most well-known game, which they're basically known for exclusively in the West, because that's what they've only been releasing here for the last 7 years, is the Utawarerumono series. And this particular game is the remake of their first game. So, the first game was originally a PC title from 2002, and as you can guess, back in the days where Aquaplus's Leaf brand actually meant something, it featured porn. Yeah, it's one of those games. And then, basically, it did well. Like a lot of VNs, if they do well, they will get, all ages adaptations, even though all ages is a fucking terrible way to describe some of these VNs. But then it got adapted. Also got a port to the PlayStation 2 that enhanced things like full voice acting, revamped the gameplay so it was better, and then got a PSP port, like Utawarerumono Portable, that was a thing, and the original PC version has been fan translated for a while. It was fan translated back in 2008, so if you're into visual novels, you have probably already played the PC version, but for a lot of people they don't, and especially after Mask of Deception and Mask of Truth took off, the series has become a lot more successful. So now it means that we have this series today. And the first game was remade a second time for the PS4, the PlayStation Vita, and, well, PC as well via Steam, which Charivine released, and that was their first foray into official PC releases since they started releasing in the West. So, what is Utawarerumono more specifically in terms of this story? So, it's the origin of the series, it's an entirely standalone experience. You don't need to play the other two games to understand this one, because it came first, 15 years before. And, like I said, if you've already known visuals, you've probably already played it. But the original Utawarerumono also got an anime adaptation. So back in 2006, 7, 8, so around the time the PS2 remake came out, it got adapted into an anime, and a lot of people who've heard of the series and possibly the underwater Ray Romano meme which came at the time would have probably heard of this game, and that's probably how they heard the story. So I'm not going to go too in depth about the story because if you're probably already familiar with it, but I'll give a summary. So you play as a Haku Aulao. Well, that person's given the name Haku Aulao because he's rescued. He is found somewhere and nursed back to health by Iruru and Aru, her younger sister, as well as her mum or aunt, aunt, I forgot her name, and there's a little village called Tusco, and then Haku Aulao decides to give back, so things like helping with the harvest, and then potential other conflicts which happen, and then it just really starts to go somewhere, because you start with the harvest, and then it's the people who run the country they're in at the time, they don't like it, so they're we're gonna start this rebellion, and it goes from there. And it really goes places with the story. I'm not gonna go into it because it's just a lot happens, and it's one of those things that's best to experience for yourself, but if you're familiar with the story, even the other two games, you'll kind of get some idea of what happens and the kind of revelations you'll find. In terms of the SRPG gameplay, this is based on Mask of Truth's engine, so it's got all the fixes and enhancements from Mask of Truth. it's, well, a turn-based system. You use Zeal to like get hits and build up combos, so it is kind of partly quick time, partly like not like press buttons and that kind of thing, and it can be potentially inaccessible if you struggle with quick time events, but they're fairly generous, so I kind of get that. And in terms of other things, you've also got like the arenas are full 3D now, so unlike the original PS2 and PSP versions, or even the PC version, it's not sprite based with like a static-ish background and low budget like rocks. It's now a full 3D grid with slightly more high budget rocks, and it looks great. They look really good. They're, well, not just serviceable, but they're great, and they're so cool. And that's kind of the newest part in terms of the graphic enhancements, because with the original game, obviously the art dates back to like the early 2000s, and this art's been remastered, so you get to see this little trip back in time and see all this remastered like 2000 era's art with like different graphic edits, and so it's basically the same identical drawing. So you get to see Eruru face going like expressing surprise, and you see the old 2000s like symbols and stuff. It's really cute actually, and like the only new art in terms of the characters is like during the title screen, where when you finish a road and you level up and you've got that screen, you see new art, and they're really nice. Same illustrator, but like art, it's really cute. But I actually prefer like having the old retro art and just having that there, and just having this trip back in time. The same applies to the CGs. They've been digitally remastered. Some people don't really like it as much because with the cropping, instead of it being like 4.3, they've kind of like cropped it slightly so it fits on a widescreen TV like this one. And so I don't like that, but I don't mind. It looks great, and it fits well with the tone. In terms of music, you've got the option of playing like normal mode or in like a new mode. So like with normal mode, it's like as if you're playing the original game. So the track list will be based off the same like default 28 tracks, which have all been reorchestrated, and they look good. And well, they look good, and it can get repetitive because it is originally based on an old game. If you've played a visual novel adaptation, especially for a niche VN, you will know that they do tend to recycle tracks a lot because, again, they're made on a budget. You primarily play for the story, so you're going to have tracks, you're going to listen to the same 20 or so tracks over and over and over again, and it can get a bit stale. As much as I love the game, it can get a little bit stale playing just the old tracks. So if you play on the new mode, what it does is it reincorporates some of the excellent music composed from Mask of Deception and Mask of Truth into the story. So it actually gets a lot more immersive, even more than it would in the basic mode. Like the original story and mode's fucking great as well, and it gets more immersive, and I really love it when you have that Mask of Deception Truth music, especially in the battle stages as well, which I think is really cool. And yeah, I think it's great. Game time, this runtime for the game's about like 30 to 40 hours, so it's shorter than Deception and Truth, like much shorter than Truth, but it's still quite like longish in its own right. But because it's a standalone experience, it's like best place to start actually is with this very first game, which is really cool, and it's something that I definitely would suggest if you're looking into like from visual novels and RPG perspective, because that's how much this game is good. Like I definitely recommend it. I'm not biased. Well, I am because I like Outlast, but who cares? But I do think it's great, and people should check it out. There are a couple of flaws which I will highlight because they're still minor, but first one is obviously because it was originally in a roguey. I feel like if you know it that context, and a lot of people who play the Utah series will know it that, you can kind of tell where there were the sex scenes, because again, like part of the story is that Hakuono ends up building a little like harem, so well as Eruru and Aruru, you get all the other side characters as well, and they're all great, like they're all fantastic, I love them all. The guy side characters are great as well, so I haven't really got a favourite so much, but you've got people from like, well, Eru, Arrow, and people like Kuro, and later characters like Cymru, I think? Something like that, Cymru, which if you said it in Welsh, is actually Welsh if you go Cymru, so I don't think it's meant to be that pronounced that way, but well, I'm going to call it Cymru. And the rest of the characters, they're really cute, I like them. Obviously, because it is originally roguey, there are a few points where it's like, yeah, for some reason they're in bed, and it's like, it just cuts the next scene, like, yeah, that's probably where one of the sex scenes were. But yeah, it never gets that explicit. Like, I think there's like one or two very mild fan service scenes, nothing like what was in Deception. And Mask of Deception's a great game, but that particular game was ruined by the fact a lot of the pacing was filled with fan service scenes and other things like that. So compared to Deception, which runs at like a similar, slightly longer length, because it is a bit longer, this game is much better paced in terms of its slice of life, in terms of its character development, in terms of other things like that. But I think both those things are worth bearing in mind if you're not super into that kind of thing. The other thing is, well, I can kind of agree a little bit, is that there's the final boss stage, which I'm not going to go into, but it does take a really long time compared to the rest of the stages. Like, the rest of the stages you could probably do in about up to 45 minutes maximum, although often a lot shorter. Whereas with this one, it was like over an hour, potentially 2 hours, which is like, yeah, that's quite long. So when you get to the end of this game, just make sure you have a whole evening blocked out for it, and it's like, you'll keep winning as long as you keep going. But yeah, that wasn't the best pacing, but compared to everything else, it's fine. Like, I can forgive it because it is like the final boss, and if you're doing the final boss at the final stage for the strategy RPG portion of a game, then obviously it's going to be a bit longer. I think that's to be expected, but when it's unusually long compared to the rest of the game, I think that's something worth noting. Like, I was saying Christmas was like Stellar Glow and Project Cross Zone, but those games, most of the stages were really long anyway, like sometimes over an hour, up to 2 hours sometimes, so that's fine to expect that. But here it's just like, yeah, it's a bit out of place. But yeah, who would I recommend this to? Visual novel fans for one. Like, if you're into visual novels, this is kind of like essential reading basically. Like, if there's like one major thing that people go and you read to the end, like there'll be things like Clanad, Fate Stay Nights, Co-Realized Rotome, Colorix Malice, other things as well, Dramatic Murder as well, I'm into BL. But in terms of the gameplay element games, you'll get things like Danganronpa, Ace Attorney, and also Utawarerumono, because it is gameplay oriented and it's a good experience. Especially in the strategy RPGs as well, that's also something else I recommend it to. The gameplay is quite deep and quite complex, and you've got extra modes, like you can like go into side quests and stuff and training stages, so you can do the gameplay on its own for the fun of it, which is a really cool addition. And yeah, if you're into SRPGs, I definitely recommend this one as well. But just bear in mind, it is a visual novel primarily, so it'll be like 70% like story scenes, 30% gameplay, to put it into context. So yeah, if you're into strategy RPGs, I also recommend this for that as well. I should also not recommend it to people who can't stand like porn content, or even implication there's porn content there, which you do kind of see a bit in here. Like, it was out of place to begin with, which is why it was taken out, from what I've heard from the people who've played the original. But yeah, I know some people might get a little icky even knowing that context is there, so I'm just like, you know, just bear that in mind. But yeah, this game you can get on the PlayStation 4, the PS Vita and PC, like I said at the start. PC will be the best platform at this point. They are fully Steam Deck compatible. They often go on sale. The whole series does. You can get it for up to like 30 quid for the whole lot. Although the Prelude to the Fallen is the most expensive, because the newest port, it came out in 2021. And then PS4, you can still get a physical copy, but you'll need to hunt around for it. I think NICE's European store did restock it a while ago, but yeah, it's not the most common thing at this point. Vita's digital only, never got a physical version. If you still want to play it, it's available. But I would recommend, if you want to get this digitally on PlayStation, to get it sooner than later, because Mask of Deception and Mask of Truth's like licensing to Atlas, back when they did third-party games, got taken down like a few years ago, so you can't get those digitally anymore. You can only get them physically on the PS4 in terms of legal like PlayStation acquisitions, because yes, you can get them on Vita. And apparently it's possible to actually overclock Utawarerumono's Vita version for this game, and it plays better, but I haven't overclocked it because I have the legitimate copy over here, so I don't need to do that. But anyway, thank you for listening to this ramble about me talking about a visual novel classic, which I do recommend. Remember, liking, commenting, subscribing, 5-star reviews, anything else to boost algorithms, really would appreciate it. Almost to 100 subs, so thank you so much for that. And thank you so much for listening and rambling, or joining me on the rambling and just listening and just thinking, maybe this game may or may not be for me. Anyway, thank you and have a lovely day. Bye bye.